The following is a GoPowercat.com production.
Scott Drew is not leaving Baylor, and that means indirectly Jerome Tang probably is not leaving Kansas State. He's locked in for the future, and today we're going to talk about all that on the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
I am not Brien Hanley, and Gills was not supposed to be there during the Open. I'm out of control already. He gave me the steering wheel for one stinking day, Mr. Gilbert, and I screwed it up. But I got to do some retweets here real quick. And hi, Mr. Gilbert. Ryan Gilbert joins me, our basketball beat writer at GoPowercat. Gills, we're in our second month of doing this show, and we haven't done a K-State show.
And you've never had me on for K-State, but I've been on for other things with Big B.
Yeah. You're like a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Not very big and dangerous. Hey, I want to get your thoughts on Scott Drew staying at Baylor. And if you're watching, you're not understanding the connection here. If he had left Baylor, both Texas Tech and Kansas State would have been worried about losing their head coach because both McCasland and Tang came up under Drew, and it looked like it was going to be Coach McCasland out of Tech, but no need to worry about that. Scott Drew turned down Kentucky. Kelsey turned down Kentucky. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, no need to worry now if you're a Tech fan or a K-State fan. For now, obviously, some things can change with other openings. As it seems it never ends. But, yeah, no need to worry. And there was not nearly as much of a scare with Jerome Tang going to potentially Baylor as there was with Arkansas. Now, if Scott Drew does go out, I still believe that McCasland's going to be that number one option for them. And so who knows if Jerome Tang would have even bothered to put K-State fans through that again.
Yeah, that's a big question. And they are out working really hard on the transfer portal. You got 4 to fill still, correct? Okay.
Yes. Yep. As of right now. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a lot of work to do. Not as much as John Calipari has to do at Arkansas. He has no players, which is an amazing thing that this happens now, the transfer portal era. But they've got one at Kansas State in the house, Doug McDaniel. Give me your thoughts on him.
I'm really excited for McDaniel. I really am. And he reminds me of Marquise Noel. Kind of the more that you watch his highlights, the more you hear him talk. D. Scott Fritchen with K-State Athletics did a nice little piece on him, getting to know him. And he was talking about, they're both from the East. They're smaller guards. They like to play with, play as a point guard with your vision, opening up things for your teammates. And so obviously Doug McDaniel was asked to score a lot at Michigan, but I think Doug is very excited to come to K-State and be more of a true point guard where you're not just asked to do those scoring things, so to speak. And so I think Tyler Perry, the same sort of thing. They wanted Tyler Perry to do everything at that point guard spot for K-State, especially earlier on in the season. And, bluntly put, it didn't work out the way that the staff had envisioned, but that's what they want out of their point guard, a guy that can score, a guy that can facilitate, play smart, limit turnovers. And I think Doug McDaniel can do all those things for Kansas State. And I've mentioned it so many times, I'll say it once more, that the Marquise Noel comparisons are real. I think Denny Clemente as well. You can throw his name in there, just the way he's sort of acrobatic and can get downhill with his floaters and stuff like that. So it's a big-time pickup. I know we say that with anybody that Kansas State's going to get in the transfer portal. It's big time, but Doug McDaniel is a dude. He really is.
But Kansas State just went through a basketball season without a true experienced point guard, and we saw the results. It just didn't work. Tyler Perry wasn't really intended to be the full-time point guard when they brought him in from North Texas, but he turned out to be that, and he did his best. And, I'm never going to fault him for not giving the effort because he certainly did give that, but it wasn't very productive. I feel like Tang and company wanted this addressed first, that we got this guy to run the offense. Now we can get the pieces around him.
For sure. And Doug McDaniel committed before the dead period, which just ended here a couple hours ago. And so before the dead period, Doug McDaniel was a K-State Wildcat. And so now you're seeing a lot of stuff this afternoon, this morning of, guys lined up for visits with K-State. I'm sure we can get into that later on. But now it's go for the rest of that roster to be filled. But you hit it on the head, Fitz. To get a point guard like that, and I know Day-Day Ames, they got a lot of trust in the returning players that are coming back to compete for those minutes, but to get Doug McDaniel was huge, and that just shows that truly was a big need for this staff, and I think they acknowledged that after the way things went at the guard spot with Tyler Perry. With all due respect, things just didn't work out, and so they acknowledged that, and they went after a big-time guard, and they got him.
So what do you think? That four open scholarships is a lot. I mean, particularly when you're talking about the transfer portal, because you're talking about NIL money, maybe expensive players, but what do you see the priorities from here?
Well, got to get a big man, especially with Gilbert departing for the transfer portal. Will McNair's out of eligibility. So you got to get a big man, maybe 2, 3, but as far as the guards go and maybe the wings, I think you're okay there. You're obviously going to add some more depth there, or even some guys that can come in and start, but you do have to get some of those players down low in the post. Michael Brown-Jones from UNC Greensboro. I have to check in on this, but I think I was told that after the dead period ended, they'll get him. K-State will get him to Manhattan. And I know the staff, if they can get him on that visit, is going to feel pretty darn good about a commitment there. So they feel good about him. And there's obviously a lot of other dudes. This morning, we learned that Arizona transfer Omar Ballo, I believe I'm saying that name correctly, is going to visit K-State next week on April 19th through the 21st. And so that's huge. He averaged a double-double at Arizona last season. Many publications have him as one of the top guys, if not the top guy, in the portal at that position and stuff. And so it's big. They're swinging for the fences, obviously. You're going to miss on some players when you do that. You go back to Patrick Gongba. You invest a lot in there. You put all your eggs in the basket. Sometimes it's not going to work out. And every player that K-State brings in for a visit here in this offseason, for some reason, things aren't going to work out, right? And that's going to be okay. But you do have to capitalize on some. You can't get them all, but you got to do better than you did last year.
Yeah, they fell short. They kept waiting, Gills. They kept waiting and waiting. I think to a degree, getting Keontae Johnson so late in the first transfer portal visit for Coach Tang when he took over at K-State, getting him so late kind of was inconvenient, because now they believe second year that they could get players late, and they just didn't show up at the level that they hoped they would.
Yeah, and you can go back to Desi Sills. He wasn't on campus until the semester had started, I believe, and Bebe Igiola was a June commit, I think, and so they kind of felt comfortable with that. You had success with doing it, being patient, but it was just different circumstances when you are a first-year head coach and you have, they have 9, 10, 11 spots to fill, so it's just different now. Now, I know 4 seems like a lot, but it could be a heck of a lot larger if you're Calipari at Arkansas or something like that. So you do want to be patient. You don't want to force things. I get that, but you got to be aggressive, be assertive. And so now the playing field is sort of leveled, right? UConn, all those Final Four teams, it's, they have the same opportunity as Kansas State had, whereas when K-State was missing out on the NCAA tournament, they capitalized with Doug McDaniel, absolutely. But now it's all right. Now you've got to, I don't know if that's the culture you're in your locker room, the NIL, your pitch for how you can develop them into the NBA, how you can help them be a better father. Down the road, I know Jerome Tang talks about all those things. So now it's just about what can you do to convince these guys to come to Kansas State.
I wonder what the market is right now in the portal. I just saw, a report. I don't know if it's factual, that one college player who's not in the portal, basketball player, when contacted, said he'll get in the portal for $1.5 million. Gills, that's not happening. I don't see that happening with a basketball player. I think Hunter Dickinson at Kansas, and apparently Kansas had the highest NIL money available at about $4 million last season. He got $1 million, but that's 25% of your NIL money to one player. You need more than a couple dudes. You need a roster, and I just don't see anyone giving up that kind of money to get one player. Maybe the big man is what you spend it on, but you can also look at Kansas and say they had the most money, but they also didn't have a lot of players. They just didn't have a very deep bench. So again, this is like a salary cap. Jerome Tang's got to be careful. I'm sure he wants to get a really good center, and he's willing to invest in that, but not get carried away.
Absolutely. Yep. Again, we talk about it with recruiting. Same thing goes for this NIL stuff. You can't put all the eggs in one basket. You look at KU. Dickinson was a good player. I'm not going to deny that, but he was not Caitlin Clark level for Iowa. He wasn't just an absolute superstar for that team. And you saw them with an early exit in the NCAA tournament. So you got to disperse that evenly. And, same thing goes for the NFL. I know we've talked about this on the Questions podcast this week, Fitz. Like, I talked about it, but you've got to play smart here. If you have a finite amount of cash to give out, you can't give it all to one dude, right?
Yeah, no, that's very true. But I do expect the next significant investment. I'm not sure what the player coming in, I'm totally spacing his name, from Chattanooga would get out of the portal. But I think the next big investment will be a big man, and then they'll go get another big man that can back things up for them, and a shooter, which I don't think they'll spend a lot of money on in terms of look, in this context, $250,000 is not a lot of money. Isn't that crazy? That's about, when you've got, let's say you have a little over $3 million, that averages out to just under $250,000 a player in basketball. It's crazy, man. But that's what the market is bearing now. And K-State's right there. They've got enough money to compete.
Yeah. These guys aren't going to bother. I talked about Ballo from Arizona, right? He's not going to bother coming to Kansas State, right? Unless, I don't know how the ins and outs of this stuff work. It's a little bit of a gray area, right? But he knows how much there's potential to get paid in Manhattan, right? So these guys know, and to see K-State line up some of these visits tells you all you need to know about the NIL with K-State right now.
Okay, over in the chat, Calico Willie wants to know if K-State is looking at any true freshmen still. Of course, there's not a huge selection of those guys this late in the process, but I guess that's a possibility if the right guy pops up, but I don't see that. I think they're going all portal from here.
Sorry, you cut out just a little bit. I heard true freshman, but
yeah, they might get a true freshman to come in this class, but I expect them to go all portal from here.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything. I know they think very highly of David Castillo, but no, from my understanding, I think it's all going to be portal for this offseason. And you go back to when the staff first did take over, Dorian Finister was the one sort of high school guy they signed, but that was in April. And so with all due respect to Finister, it didn't work out for him at Kansas State, but they took a flyer on him with his upside and stuff. They said that he's got NBA potential, but at this point in time, generally speaking, if there's still an uncommitted high school prospect out there, it's, the odds aren't in your favor for them to turn out and be a prominent player for your program. That you can take a chance on a guy like that, but it's so I don't know. To answer the question, I think that they're strictly focused on the portal right now.
He also asked, as we track back to how we started the show, he was really worried about Tang going to Baylor. I wasn't. I saw too many moving pieces here. First step was Drew taking Kentucky. I didn't think that would happen, and it didn't. I thought stay with his heart in Waco. And the second part is then they'd have to honestly get down to Coach Tang, because Grant McCasland was going to be the top choice, and maybe Jerome Tang would have been the second. But from what I heard, it wasn't going to go past McCasland. He was going to take it. But I don't know. How worried were you about Tang and the Baylor situation?
Not as nearly as worried as I was with Tang to Arkansas, right? So I think unless Calipari, there's so many dominoes, so many things on my mind. Unless Scott Drew, if he goes to Kentucky, I think you'd be a little concerned. If McCasland ends up staying in Lubbock, all right, now you've got some panic going through your mind. But again, like I said earlier, I don't know if Jerome Tang would want to do that to K-State fans again. And maybe he would entertain it and try to get some more or raise or control for his program, whatever that may be. But just with what happened with Arkansas, it's tough to see that happening again. So I wasn't nearly as concerned as I was, 6 days ago when we were all panicking.
Man, this portal stuff and how it affects coaching changes is amazing. 6 days ago, Arkansas still didn't know who their coach was. They made a hire, and now Kentucky has made a hire, or is getting close to. They made an offer, certainly. Dude, if you don't make a coaching offer in a couple days, Arkansas went through a little struggle. They lost their entire roster. This is just craziness. Yeah,
and you've got to be. We talk about it. Okay, K-State's got to go out and you miss the NCAA tournament. You're in the NIT. Go out and get those dudes. And they get Doug McDaniel, right? So that's valuable time right now at this very moment. Guys are lining up visits. We just talked about that. Okay, if you don't have a coach, you obviously can't do anything, right? You've got nothing for your program. Well, you can't bring a dude in and say, hey, I'm the AD. I want you to come in and see our facilities, right? That just doesn't happen. So you've got to move quickly here, and times are changing. Fitz, you've talked about it, right? It's just unheard of 10 years ago for a boomer like you, right? You're not going to see a coaching search end in a matter of days, but just with the way that things are now, portal, NIL, all that stuff, you've got to be super quick.
Yep. A boomer like me. Yeah, you just won't stop with that. I'm not a boomer, man. I'm a
Technically, you're not.
Fringe boomer. You hurt my feelings with that one. I remember peach baskets. So being hung at the rim, they'd start doing that in Lawrence, and everyone else caught on to it. I was really worried about Arkansas. I don't think people appreciate how close that was. I mean, technically he wasn't given a final offer, which is how you do it. So Arkansas can say, we never offered him, but you sure as hell talked about how much you get paid and NIL and every detail he would need to know to accept the job. So I think it's always disingenuous when, you try to spin something and say, yeah, this guy was our first choice all along. Oh yeah. Tell that to Chris Beard and Jerome Tang. Them that just spent a day or so wasting time talking to you because apparently you weren't going to hire him.
The offer, nobody's ever going to say no to the offer, right?
Right. I mean, you've already agreed to the terms, so now let me offer you. Oh, well, let's take a little break here. We're sponsored by our friends at Synergy Financial Partners. Make sure you go check out their website and their products that they offer, the services that they offer. They're incredible people with an incredible amount of knowledge on how to help you, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, and give you direction for the future. We'll be right back after this break.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Well, we're back. And now we're going to talk about some more fun stuff. Gills, how much of a program can Jerome Tang build at Kansas State? How big of a deal can Kansas State basketball be? And since you brought up my age, I'd just like to know what's going on here with – I just totally lost my train of thought, Gills. I just proved you right.
Right? You are a boomer. What can Jerome Tang do at Kansas State? I'll help you out here a little bit, right? I think that's where you're going. So if you ask Jerome Tang this question, he's compared the basketball program at Kansas State to UCLA or Duke, Kentucky, Kansas down the road. He's been outspoken about that. When you look at the court stormings, right? And he's pushing away the fans from storming the court this last season when they beat Kansas, right? He's been outspoken that there's no reason, given time, right? Time is a big part in this. Given time, there's no reason K-State can't be like a program like that where you never even think about storming the court or something like that. So time is big though, because if you can consistently reach the second, third weekend in the NCAA tournament, finish in the top quarter of the Big 12, and it's a given that K-State's going to go out and sign a dude or two in the transfer portal, get a 4, maybe a 5-star here and there in the recruiting ranks from high school. It takes time to build that stuff, obviously, but Jerome Tang, if you ask him that question, he says, absolutely, this is why I didn't go to Arkansas. This is why I left Baylor, right? So to come to Kansas State. So Jerome Tang would believe it, right? His whole staff believes it. So I think it's there for them, right? And obviously a coaching staff isn't going to be together forever, right? Guys are going to go out and do other things. And so, but by and large, I think the nucleus is there, and Tang's got a good staff that he's put together. So with time, I don't see why not, but obviously you do have to win. And obviously I've mentioned this, Tang is going to be wanting to get that raise and getting that control for his program, all that stuff, and making sure his assistants are paid well as well. Well, now it's time to win. Okay, you got that. And so if you keep doing this year after year and you're not making the NCAA tournament or you're losing in the first weekend. Well, at what point does Gene Taylor maybe just say, hey, I love you, Jerome Tang, but your results on the court maybe aren't there where we want it to be. So I got full faith in the staff and Jerome Tang to do that. The guys they're bringing in, absolutely, 100% that they can get to the Final Four, which hasn't happened in my lifetime. Fitz is so old that it hasn't happened in his lifetime either. He missed it by a couple months, right? But, with time, with the proper, if he's got the control over the program that he wants and he's got nobody stepping in on his toes and telling him who he can or can't have on his roster, right? Why not? Why can't K-State be a blue blood?
Yeah, I agree. I know where I was going. I was going to say, because I'm a near boomer, I remember all that history. I lived through some of the history. As you mentioned, the last Final Four was 64. That was the fourth one in school history. I was born a couple months later on June 1st. But there have been a lot of Elite Eights and Sweet 16s, and the Final Four is just hanging out there to try to get back to it. I feel like Jerome Tang can get the program there. I know this last season was a disappointment, but so much just went wrong from the jump on that season. And honestly, I think it served as a distraction for a second-year head coach that probably learned some lessons from that. But this program has a rich tradition, and people 60 and over remember that tradition very well, and Jerome Tang knows about it. That's one of the reasons why he came here. Being the guy to resurrect Kansas State basketball greatness would be a pretty cool feather to put in your cap. I don't even know if he has a cap, but you know what I mean. But that's where Jerome Tang's head is. He's going to put this program towards the top of the conference, and if that is true, you're towards the top of college basketball.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day, Fitz, about the college basketball is unique, and at the NCAA tournament, you can play so well for an entire season, and in a 40-minute little period, look at the Big 12 this past season, right? Or even the last Elite Eight for Kansas State, okay? You go to overtime with Michigan State, you miss a shot here, miss a shot there. That season's going to be looked at a little differently, if you can't get over the hump against Kentucky out in Greensboro in that second-round game. Even going back to when K-State made the Elite Eight with Bruce Weber in 18, where they had 18, they had really not a whole lot of business getting there, but give them credit, they beat a good Kentucky team. But, the 16 seed beating the 1, and, things worked out. So it's just weird when and so Jerome Tang, give him all the credit in the world for getting to the Elite Eight in year 1. Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson certainly just rose up to that occasion. At the same time, it could go either way, right? They were a shot or two away from getting to the Final Four against FAU, but they were also a shot or two away from not even getting to that Elite Eight. So there's a fine line there in these postseason games. And so, Kansas State had, in the 80s, had great hoops tradition that still it went on, right? And then they lost it, right, with Asbury and Wooldridge, right? I'm getting my names right. These are way before my time.
You're doing a good job.
And so my first memories were Bob Huggins and obviously Frank Martin. And so I've been very blessed growing up just watching K-State basketball. It's been great. Obviously, there were some down years with Weber, but there were some highs as well. So Tang is well aware, though, of that tradition, that history. And also, I know he mentioned when he got hired, just the fans. We talked about this, why maybe he wouldn't go to Baylor. There's just not enough fan support that he has in Waco that's in Manhattan. So I know that was one of the draws for him to go to K-State. And obviously, there's a little, he's playing a little chess there. I think he's trying to win over the fans and saying that. But he knows how much of a difference it can make to have Bramlage Coliseum rocking. It is a true home court advantage when that place is loud and Sandstorm's rocking. And so I just dropped my pen. I'm sorry if you heard that, but I'm getting fired up here thinking about what Jerome Tang can accomplish here at Kansas State in the coming years. But he's got to stay, right? He's got to turn down whatever offers are going to come his way. And so that's probably another thing that was on Jerome Tang's mind. Resetting is just, it's probably fun in a way to field a roster. I get that if you're one that loves competition, trying to piece something together like that. I'm sure that K-State staff would, Jerome Tang would love that. But at the same time, okay, you've got these guys, Jones and Rich and Ames coming in their sophomore year now. And then Castillo's coming in, all the work you did on these players to get them here. And, things are just comfortable now, right? You're where you want to be if you're Jerome Tang. If you leave and you go to a place where you've got more NIL money to work with, you got a place where you got to raise, whatever that may be, that's great. That really truly is great. And that's what was on Jerome Tang's mind. But you do have to restart the entire process all over again. And the last 2 years of hard work and all that stuff in the practice facility, the film room, I don't want to say it was just wasted, but you're having to hit the reset button on that. So that's the part of the thing I mentioned just a minute ago with time, right? The momentum can continue to build at the program you are at if you can start winning games and getting to deep runs in postseason play.
Okay, so his first year they brought in 2 freshmen. Dorian Finister's now left. I expect he's going to go back home closer to New Orleans. Taj Manning's still in the program. You mentioned the 3 freshmen from last season. And they've got David Castillo coming in. And so that's 5 guys. They wanted Patrick Gongba. They didn't get him. So that would have been another high school recruit. Do you think that 3 to 1 range is where he's going to sit with most of his recruiting classes and just fill with the portal? Or is that sustainable?
I think you've got to get the guys in the high school range that are understanding and okay with not being promised a single minute at Kansas State University. And some guys are not going to be okay with that. Other guys are going to run to that challenge and to that competition to want to work harder. And that's the type of culture that Jerome Tang has built at Kansas State. So I think it's sustainable. Yeah, you're probably not going to, you're going to have to narrow your search a little bit just because certain guys obviously aren't going to want that. But I think the writing is probably on the wall a little bit when you look at what Jerome Tang and his staff have gone after in the transfer portal. By and large, I would say it's more that aren't going to be a developmental type player that if you're going to bring this guy in, he's going to have a chance to start, right? Not that right. I'm sure they tell everybody that you have a chance, but realistically, bringing in Jerome Gilbert when he came from LSU, okay, he redshirted. I think that was more of a long-term, even Cam Carter. I don't know if that was the initial plan right away for him to come in and play a starting role on an Elite 8 team. He did it, but he played virtually nothing at Mississippi State before coming to Kansas State. So I think you're going to see maybe, you're still going to have your high school recruiting, right? That's not stopping. That's never going to end. But I think this is probably true with a lot of college basketball as well. Teams are going to have to get older and stay old. And the easy way to do that is just revamp your roster every offseason in the transfer portal. And obviously, you're going to have guys transfer out of your program too. And so some of those guys may be transfers that came in. Some of those guys may be the younger high schooler guys that maybe just aren't happy with the minutes they're getting. But Guy, I thought I was on the group panel here for a sec. Fitz, you look at Jones. He didn't play a lot this year. Yeah. He could have easily left. Easily. Michaela Bridge didn't play hardly at all, especially towards the thick of conference play. He wasn't really playing a role at all for this team in the Big 12. And he's still locked in on Kansas State. Now, Data Ames, of course, he played, but even Taj Manning, and that could be a segue into Mark Mitchell. I know K-State's going to be in the mix here, it sounds like, with Mitchell, who's a Duke transfer, who's from Kansas City, who's got a connection to Taj Manning. And so that's not going to be the end-all, be-all. They're not best friends or anything like that. But I think K-State's going to be in the mix there. But Taj Manning, back to him, he didn't play at all. He played virtually. He started the first game against USC, and then he basically disappeared for the rest of the season, right? So yeah. Manning, and he was a Weber recruit. So I think he just maybe loves K-State University, but that's the type of players that they're getting into the program that aren't going to just bail. Now, obviously, you've got Colbert and Finister. They left. They wanted to transfer, right? Carter, that's fine for whatever reasons. You're going to have guys transfer out. But as far as those high school, guys that they're bringing in, I think they're understanding that, okay, I might not play a whole lot here to start, but I'm going to, put my head down and work in the gym and get better. And so hopefully next season or the season after that, right, my time is coming, right? So I think that's probably the pitch. But I know that Jerome Tang does not promise any of his guys minutes. Yeah,
no, you get yourself into trouble when you do that. What's the latest on David Gasson? We still don't know.
No, he's put out some interesting videos to mess with us on social media and stuff like that. But no, we don't. From my understanding, I still think he's going to stay. But I mean, it is nearly mid-April now, and we haven't heard an announcement. So. The draw to go play overseas or something like that, be closer to family, I get that, and that is there. But boy, Jerome Tang was very outspoken about his desire to keep Gasson and how it can benefit him moving forward with one more season at Kansas State. So no, to answer your question, we haven't heard anything official, but from my understanding, it's sounding like he's still wanting to stay.
If he stays, he and Taj Manning will be the only players left from that Elite Eight team. Am I correct?
Yeah, and Manning was a redshirt, obviously. So, yeah, I pointed that out, I think, when Cam Carter left, that if Gasson were to leave, nobody from that team that played a single minute in the NCAA tournament that season will be back next year for K-State. But Gasson obviously can be that one guy. But even if it is just one, that's nuts. That just shows you how college basketball is right now. You're going to have some turnover on your roster, but at the same time, though, maybe that was just because it was year number one for Jerome Tang at Kansas State. So now moving forward, okay, you're going to see some guys stay in the program long term.
Okay, we've got a super chat here from Cornelio, but one more before we get to that. I just don't know how, if you hit in the portal this hard year after year, you can have any consistency in your program. He's got to start building from the ground up, doesn't he? I mean, the portal's fun, but somewhat addictive.
Right.
You just can't have this kind of roster turnover for multiple reasons, but probably the most important is you don't have to reinvent your culture every year. Yeah, remember Coach Tang talking about he's looking for a leader, and he wanted Tyler Perry to be that, and Tyler tried to be that, but I don't know if he was an overly effective leader. You shouldn't have to look for a new leader every year. You should have that homegrown. And I think Day and RJ and those guys can be that in the future.
Sure. And that's the joy, though, of Jacob Pohl and Rodney Magruder, Barry Brown. They spent 4 seasons at K-State, and they went through the struggles as a young player, and then they go up and they are leaders, right? Like K-State, Jerome Tang mentioned how he was taking applications for leaders early on last season. And I'm sure.
Mine.
Say what?
He didn't take mine.
Right. He didn't take mine either.
He led me to the door.
Right. Exactly. But that's how you can truly be an elite team. Maybe not an elite program, because when you do that, you're going to go through your highs and your lows. So I think you can maybe stay higher more consistently with getting those guys from the portal. But to answer what we were mentioning earlier, what you just said, Fitz, is as long as you don't sacrifice in the portal the guys you're going after, the pitches you're telling them, as long as you don't sacrifice that and panic, and maybe that's what happened last year, right? Like, you don't want to sacrifice the culture in your locker room if you bring in somebody. And so maybe that's why K-State came up a bit short. Maybe that's why they could come up short again in a year or two, or this offseason. You don't want to sacrifice that culture. And so if you're not having a leader come up through the ranks of your locker room, so to speak, and be that leader, that Barry Brown type player, right? The cops are after me. I don't know if you can hear that, but
no.
I live so close to Aggieville. But if you don't have that high school type player, okay, you've got to be sure that you're not compromising what you've built your locker room to be by bringing in some of these guys. Now, K-State didn't have maybe a true leader last season, but I don't think they had any guys that were real bad issues in the locker room as well on the other side. No. So.
Okay, here's what Cornelio asked us. Thank you very much for the super chat. Folks, if you want your question guaranteed to be on, that's what you got to do. Good afternoon, fellas. Yes, give Fitz some money. Quick question. Do you see a scenario where Coach Tang might take another late in the process player very late in the summer? Yeah, I mean, I think they will. I think they're not going to fill up in May or June. I think they're going to have an opening for that last piece that they might be able to add. They don't want to get in a position where a Keontae Johnson type pops up in August and they're full. I think he'll hang on to one.
Yeah. So Will McNair and Quez Glover were both later, very late in one of those cases last offseason. And so I think that, if Jerome Tang doesn't land some of these guys, that is maybe the half glass full approach, is that, okay, you've got your, Keontae Johnson's not going to be out there, right? That's just K-State. I don't want to say they got lucky, but that's not something you can reasonably expect to happen ever again for a superstar to be out there I think he committed in August, right? So you can't expect that. But at the same time, that's the one good thing, maybe. Okay, we got a spot here. Somebody, something, Will McNair doesn't work out at Providence. All right, hey, we've got a spot for you. Quez Glover, things aren't the way that you want it to be at BYU. Come on in here. And so, that's probably something that's in the back of Jerome Tang's eyes or mind, right? That he can have that comfort of, if somebody does pop up out there in the portal, okay, come on in. We don't have to worry about running somebody off. And I think Anthony Thomas, the first offseason was pretty late with his signing. He was right before maybe the semester. I believe I'd have to check on that. But again, if you have that opening and, all right, you have no more options, you can bring in a guy that I think he was from JUCO or very small school. I can't remember, but came in, redshirted, didn't work out. Wish you the best. But you can at least take a chance, throw some darts at the dartboard. I don't want to say Dorian Finister was like that when he committed, but I think you were rolling the dice a little bit, but at the same time, if it doesn't pan out, you are not going to be one bit upset. But if David Castillo, if he fizzles out and doesn't work out in purple, that's more of an issue when you put all your eggs in those baskets. You get those guys to come. Castillo's got to be a dude. Now, by all means, Castillo, can't say enough good things about him. Very excited for him in purple, but it's different when you got a guy that comes in very late and things don't work out. Then it is what it is.
Yep, I agree. Okay, let's wrap this up. You've mentioned a couple names, but let's give everyone a treat. Give me some names to watch, including those two. Let's reiterate those names. Give me some names to watch for K-State fans in this transfer portal cycle.
Yeah, Michael Brown Jones, who we talked about earlier on the show. From my understanding, K-State's going to get him in on a visit soon. I know that before or during the dead period, I should say that was sort of the understanding. Okay, you get him in on a visit, things go well, K-State's going to feel really good about that. So I know Mark Mitchell's maybe not at the very top of who I realistically think K-State's going to get, but that one is certainly interesting with his KC ties, with his Taj Manning ties. The fit wasn't right at Duke, and he's not necessarily ready for the NBA, so he's going to go try somewhere else. And I think that's very comparable to Arthur Kaluma. I'm sure that K-State staff is probably in Mitchell's ear giving him that same sort of pitch that, okay, things didn't work out for Arthur Kaluma. They play sort of kind of the same style of play at his previous school. Now, Kaluma's NBA, he's going to be NBA bound at some point, if that's this offseason or next offseason. Does he have a real shot in the NBA? That's another debate conversation. But, I think you can tell Mark Mitchell, hey, we can get you there. Just come give us a chance, right? Come visit Manhattan. Talk to your old buddy Taj Manning, and we'll go from there, right? So I think K-State's going to be in the mix for Mark Mitchell. I mentioned the guy from Arizona, Omar Ballo. I believe I'm saying that right. Averaged a double-double last season. That's big. CJ Jones from UIC. I know he was a hot commodity maybe 2 weeks ago, and it seems like things have just kind of quieted down, but it doesn't seem like Jones is a guy that's going to be rushing things in this process. But now that we're out of the dead period, perhaps we'll get some more clarity there. But Jones is a guy that I think would fit well in K-State's 5-out offense. And so I know Xavier's in the mix, but we'll see. I was curious to see how Doug McDaniel committing at that guard spot would affect CJ Jones. Is that somewhere, does CJ Jones just want to go somewhere where he can be that dude and maybe be quote unquote guaranteed some minutes? Well, maybe K-State's not going to be the spot for him. So maybe it's just a matter of what his priorities are for a school that he's looking at. So, there's a couple other guys. William Kyle, I think from South Dakota State. I don't know. I know he's scheduled to line up a visit to Kansas State. He's probably not the highest up on my board if I'm the head coach or running a program, but K-State is going to bring him in. So that's noteworthy. K-State did play against South Dakota State. So I'm sure they're very familiar with him. He didn't score. I think he scored like 10 points maybe against K-State this past season, but they're familiar with him. If you're going to bring him in, they obviously know something that they see in him. So there's a lot of guys out there. Those are probably some of the more notable ones right now. There's a Rutgers transfer. I know that I believe it was after Ramadan had ended, right? He was going to start to focus in on his recruitment more. And so maybe we'll gain some more information there in the coming days, but there's a lot of moving, it seems like it's every day there's something new, and it's a lot to monitor without a doubt, but this staff is very busy. And so I know some of the staff was out in Phoenix, but for the Final Four, some other staff members just stayed here to really kind of hit that portal. And so just because it was a dead period doesn't mean K-State couldn't talk to players. It just means there was no in-person, visits and recruiting allowed. So K-State's been working over the last week, but now that dead period is over, you can start getting guys to Manhattan on their visits. This is where you make or break it for if you're Jerome Tang.
Very good stuff, Ryan Gilbert. I appreciate it. You help me sound very intelligent when I talk about K-State basketball because you do a great job.
You do a great job setting me up, Fitz.
It's unless I forget the question, which I did twice, by the way.
Yeah, because
I recovered the second time. Man, getting old sucks. Maybe I am a boomer. I don't know.
I've told you you are. Come on.
Let's go to our second break, and I'll come back and wrap up the show and give you a little preview of what we got cooking for tomorrow. It's going to be pretty interesting. That was Ryan Gilbert from GoPowercat. I'm Fitz, and we will be right back after this message from Synergy Financial Partners.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Well, it's been a very good day for the Big 12. Scott Drew stays at Baylor. No more upheaval in the coaching ranks, because that would have put fans at Texas Tech and Kansas State into a tizzy with thoughts that they might lose their coach to Baylor. But this is the second time in about a 6-day period a Big 12 coach has walked away from a very nice SEC job, and I think that says a lot about how these coaches want to be at the schools in the Big 12 and play at the highest level of college basketball. It's a very good day for Baylor, in fact, and a great day for the Big 12. On tomorrow's show, Big B is still out of pocket, so I will be back in here, but I got a great guest, Chris Hummer, the transfer portal expert for 24/7 Sports. He and I are going to talk about the chaos that is about to start when the football transfer portal reopens on April 16th. That's Tuesday. There's a lot of talk that it'll be just massive chaos with players that seem secure on rosters suddenly transferring to new rosters with deals that were cut behind the scenes, and a lot of teams might get ravaged by the portal. We'll see what Mr. Hummer says. That's on tomorrow's edition of the Big 12 Insiders. And I'm Fitz, and that's it for this edition of the Insiders.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.